Well, Governor, a busy 10 days for you, state of the state, second inaugural. Congratulations on beginning, as you said, the fifth year of the 8-year plan, not necessarily a second term. It's good to be with you, and we appreciate you making the time to talk with NorthJersey.com, the Asbury Park Press, and other partners of ours here in the USA Today Network, New Jersey. One of the things that struck me in both speeches, and obviously this is deliberate, is you're really pivoting to focus in on affordability, alongside obviously the ongoing management of the pandemic and other facets of your agenda. But affordability strikes me as a new top priority. I was really intrigued yesterday with what you said about school funding, and so I wondered if we could talk a little bit about where you start on affordability as pertains to taxpayers and property taxes and the overall cost of living in New Jersey.
Good to be with you, Ed. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I think you said it right about the fifth year of an 8-year journey. The fact of the matter is, constitutionally, you're required to sort of put your hand back on the Bible and shine a light on the fact that you're going from one term to another. But in so many respects, particularly with the pandemic, it's just one day to the next. And as I mentioned yesterday, I am who I said I would be. So it is also, I believe, I see this in much more of a continuum than I see it as any sort of quantum shift or quantum step. And so listen, a couple of thoughts. Affordability is not something that we just came up with last week. This has been something that we've been on from moment one. It's possible, I think, perhaps that we're emphasizing affordability, and opportunity is the other word I would use, maybe with brighter lights than we had been. But, we have had 4 of the lowest property tax increase years on record in New Jersey. I mentioned yesterday, that's good, but it's not good enough. We want to see them go down. We've delivered 14 different tax cuts to the middle class, working families, and seniors, including last year checks that added up to hundreds of millions of dollars. I don't think there's one magic wand as it relates to affordability. So we've been pulling a lot of different levers. A couple of examples. You refer to this, Ed. When the state steps up to the plate and funds public education in a very robust level at the state level, or when we fund infrastructure, and both of them are all-time high investments for New Jersey, that means that's $1 in your local taxpayers' pocket, property taxpayers' pocket, that stays in their wallet, stays in their pocket. So shifting the burden of responsibility to the state away from localities as it relates to financial realities is a big step, as an example, in that direction. But we want to continue to stay at it. We still have 2 shared services czars who are still, one Republican, one Democrat, who have done a lot, actually, and they'll continue to stay on that beat. And so those are a couple of examples of many, but we want to stay on this, and we wanted to underscore that we've been on affordability from day one, but I want to triply underscore today to remind folks that we will stay on it, and we will.
Yeah, I think as we continue to see some progress with the pandemic emerging, as we started to before the Omicron surge, and as now we're seeing some more encouraging signs as hospitalizations fall and the spread rate drops. I think it's definitely an interesting issue to highlight. I think I'm hearing, certainly from our readers, a lot of interest in this issue, which is why I asked about it, because I think it's on people's minds as we kind of have this reset moment as the pandemic begins to end. Obviously,
by the way, I hear the same thing, Ed. I agree 100%. It's top of mind for folks, and we hear that.
Yeah, and it's a complicated. I think it's an interesting issue for you to take on. Certainly, I think the state has leadership opportunities in it, but as you say, it's not. There's no silver bullet, right? And obviously, I appreciate what you said about the shared services czars, and we are running a state with a lot of parochial municipalities that are overlaid on top of school district maps, and we've got a lot of different levers, and I think it will be interesting to watch, how we continue to deal with it. Are you considering, a commission or some other kind of bold stroke to really take this issue on, or is this going to be more of an organic effort with the legislature?
I think more organic, both in whatever actions we can take in the executive branch and certainly in cooperation with the legislature. I said something yesterday that is a different way of approaching this similar theme, but different words. I mentioned that the state does not set property taxes, either the governor or the legislature, but decisions that we make at the state level can have enormous implications. School funding is the best example of that. But right. No, I don't see the need for a commission. I see the need for continued dogged determination, close cooperation with the legislature, which we've enjoyed and will continue to enjoy, God willing. And we'll grind this thing and continue to grind it to get to a better place.
You talked about your relationship with the legislature, and I know you took some pains yesterday to applaud your colleagues in those two bodies as partners. Given the national mood right now, it struck me as and certainly the affordability bells rang loudly with your Republican colleagues. How will you work with them on this issue? How do you envision a relationship with the Republicans in the legislature playing out this year?
We've had a good relationship on both sides of the aisle, honestly, for the past, I'd say of our first 4 years, from the past 2.5 or 3 years in particular. We had to all get to know each other in that first year and a half, but that's long in the rearview mirror, including, by the way, a very productive relationship with now former Senate President Steve Sweeney. It was really good, I have to say, on that stage to have Steve Oroho, the Senate Minority Leader. I know John DeMeo wanted to be there from the Assembly. He could not be. Having Chris Christie on that stage, frankly, just to remind folks, at the end of the day, we may have differences. We may be in different parties, but at the end of the day, we're all Americans and we're all New Jerseyans, and we all want what's best for our kids and our communities. But we'll have a very, I'm looking forward to, our team has already sat with Messrs. Oroho and DeMeo last week. I spoke to Steve briefly yesterday. Craig Coughlin, I've had a great relationship for the past 4 years, and I'll say the same about Nick Scuteri, the new Senate president. Very long-standing relationship with him as a senator, as the chair of the Judiciary Committee, now as Senate president. So we'll continue, God willing, to build on those relationships on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah, I was with your colleague from New York, Governor Hochul, this morning in a similar conversation, and it struck me that she was describing her situation, which is not dissimilar to yours, in that she's got a democratically controlled legislature, and trying to do a good government agenda that's not dissimilar from yours. You talked yesterday at some length about modeling this for the nation in a time when the politics at the federal level are just badly fractured. And so how do you bear that message out to the rest of the country? It's interesting to me to watch our state government systems function in a far healthier way than the federal is at this point. So,
yeah, I mean, the national politics are broken. There's kind of no other way to put that, right?
Yeah.
And it's no one party's fault. It's no one person's fault, although I've got my list of folks who I would say share more of the blame than not. But my points yesterday, which I had mentioned on election night as well, is including across the aisle, we're not going to always agree, but we're getting stuff done. I think folks, when they elect somebody, they want them to get stuff done and live up to their words. And I'm not patting myself on the back, because we're not perfect and we still have a distance for sure to travel. But we are, as I mentioned, we are who we said we would be. And we've done virtually, we have been in office doing the things we promised that we'd be doing, and we'll continue to do it. But it is important that we make progress and that we're not screaming at each other. And we don't have people who are proud that we're not making progress. And so that the state of the national politics is really, really worrying. And my only point was, listen, we're not perfect, but we are getting stuff done in New Jersey, right, in a manner that we said we would. And I think that needs to be told. I'm a senior member of both the Democratic Governors Association, but also I think more importantly, the Nonpartisan National Governors Association. And we learn from both of those organizations and we try to apply lessons back into New Jersey. But there's also an ability for us to say, you know what, let me just show you what we're doing or talk about what we're doing on issues X, Y, or Z. And maybe they've got some applicability in other states or around the country. And so our engagement in those organizations, as an example, is for that two-way street to actually happen more easily.
Appreciate that. You mentioned getting things done. Yesterday, you also made some references to the emerging cannabis and sports betting businesses, which I know are big, will weigh heavily into plans on revenue. Where do you see them fitting in, not maybe necessarily for this coming budget cycle, but beyond, in terms of helping drive some of the fiscal picture?
Yeah, the sport, there are different dynamics in each of those industries. So sports betting, as you know, is up, alive and well. I have the two first legal sports bets made hanging in my office, and I looked at them the other day and reminded myself it was June of 2018. And we dominate that industry now. We've long passed Nevada in terms of the book. More importantly, we've been successful in attracting a lot of the jobs here. It's basically a fintech industry or subset of the fintech industry. So getting those jobs in New Jersey's been key. New York is now legalized, so I'm sure there'll be a chunk of that goes back across the Hudson. But it's not a big money spinner on the budget. This is still a double-digit million. By the way, we'll take it. It's better than a kick in the pants. Cannabis, as you know, not yet up and running. The medical side has been, and we've ungummed that, and that is making an enormous and has made an enormous amount of progress. The recreational side will go live, God willing, this year. I would hope in a matter of months. That has the potential, not in this budget. It'll be a modest impact on this budget, if at all. Maybe the budget that I talk to a month from now will have some numbers in it, but that's probably a multi-$100 million state revenue business, a multi-billion-dollar business generally, but for the state, when it matures, my guess is it's a multi-$100 million revenue item, and God knows we will need it and we'll put it to good use.
Yeah, watching that industry just sort of spin and attract continued investment in terms of the infrastructure that it's building to become an industry has been fascinating. Just watching all that money pour into it, and that's why I wanted to ask about it. It just strikes me as a massive opportunity for the state in terms of revenue.
And Ed, you didn't ask about it because you asked about the revenues, but I would be remiss if I didn't say I got there. By the way, Nick Scutari helped me mightily get there. I got there based on social justice and social injustice of the past, and that to me is the most important part of this, the rationale for this industry.
Yeah, that's an interesting. I am in the same camp. I think it is a social justice issue. Pivoting from that, let's talk a little bit about the ongoing racial reckoning that's happening. Still a big factor in a lot of our readers' minds, particularly in urban areas like Paterson, which is a soft spot for us, a city we care quite a bit about. Obviously, we care about North Camden, Jersey City, all our cities too. But there are some ongoing discussions in New Jersey about public safety and police reform and the racial reckoning. I know that you're pushing hard on some gun legislation. Where does that part of your agenda play out in the year to come?
Still very important, and you have to. The pandemic is still hanging right over us. It has gotten better, as you rightfully point out, but and when you've got a loss of over 30,000 lives, it's unfathomable. And it rightfully, by the way, crowds out discussion of a lot of other things that are also really important that are going on at the same time. So I'm glad you asked about this. It will continue to be central to our agenda over the next number of years. I actually was in Paterson on Monday, also in Passaic, visiting with those heroic firefighters. Ended up in Jersey City. So I'm in the big, I'll be in Newark tomorrow. I'm in the big urban communities on a regular basis. And we've made a lot of progress. I think we should be proud as a state that we have deepened meaningfully the relationship between law enforcement and the communities they serve. And we should all take pride in that. But at the same time, we have work to do. We've passed gun safety packages 1.0, 2.0. We've got most of the elements of 3.0 that are still on the table. And God willing, working with the legislature, we will get those to my desk to sign into law. And they make a difference. This is not abstract. On the one hand, they don't impair your Second Amendment rights. But on the other hand, they've made us one of the safest gun states, if not the safest, in America. And that will continue to be, so deepening law enforcement engagement with communities will continue to be a priority. Gun safety will continue to be a priority. Again, undoing the ravages of the war on drugs, which has been hugely impactful in Black and brown communities, will continue to be an agenda. We have, as you know, Ed, one of the most consequential bills I signed in our first term was the independent prosecutor requirement if there is any fatality or any shooting while someone is in interactions with law enforcement. That independent process has been a source of comfort to a lot of communities, and that will continue. Thankfully, that will continue to be the case. So, a source of comfort, by the way, in the context of a tragedy. So, I must put that caveat around it. This will all of the above and more will continue to be a high priority for us.
Appreciate that. Let me pivot over to voting rights. Obviously, New Jersey is not in danger of becoming a state with restricted voting rights, at least not from my vantage point. But one of the things that you experienced in high relief is that as we expand access to ballots, election night and the way votes are counted in New Jersey it was disrupted, right? You had to wait. We really noticed at this time, watching the returns come in county by county, that all of the different systems across the state, all 21 counties, are just slightly different from one another. With the new access to ballots, the counting was at a different pace here, there, and everywhere. As you think about voting, is that something that you might want to tackle again with a commission to think about sort of creating a unified state election platform to handle the kind of new ways in which people vote in this expanded environment of expanded access?
It's a very good question. I'm not sure, again, we need a commission because I think we know the levers, but and the Secretary of State has done a fantastic job. But you're absolutely right. I mean, at the end of the day, we won our election by 3.3 or 3.4%, which obviously we're proud of. We knew it was going to tighten, and it did tighten. But you had certain counties with their machine tabulations hitting go at 8:01 p.m. and other places coming in over the course of the next 24 hours, and in certain cases counting absentee and early votes over a series of days. Yeah, so that's something that I think a lot of us want to look at. Last year, at the height of the pandemic, this is one idea, and I'm not sure where I am on this, but you may recall, Ed, that we allowed clerks in counties to count vote by mail ballots early in the 10 days leading up to the election. But we raised the penalty for anyone who would leak any of those trends meaningfully. We pulled that back this year. We just did it for that 1 year. Nobody leaked anything, by the way. It was an overwhelmingly vote by mail election, and participation was at an all-time high. Maybe that's something we should reconsider. Whether or not putting that back in place may make some sense. I'm not sure I'm there yet, but that's one example. So that you would have, in County X, you would have been counting the vote by mail ballots. The early in-person voting, which we did this year, worked quite well. Those are machine-based. So you have a scenario where you were much more likely have a clearer and more fuller sense of all types of ballots on election night. So that's something I think we should at least think about.
No, that's interesting. I think in 2020, because of the pandemic and the tenor of that national election, I think no one observed that would maybe repeat in microcosm across the state level elections this year. And so we observed it closely and in real time as trying to report on it. You obviously experienced it as a candidate seeking reelection. And so it just struck me as an interesting issue to check in on. I think
I'm in violent agreement with you on that one.
Yeah. I'm being told that you've got to run, so we'll let it go here. And I hope we can continue to do this from time to time this year. I would love to, again, extend an invitation to meet with you at the studio in Neptune at some point. I know that's convenient for you when it's safe. And we'd like to get together in person with the state editorial board. I know we weren't able to pull that off in the fall because of the pandemic, but also on my list for this year. So thanks to you.
I would like both, Ed. I'd like to get to Neptune and also sit with the editorial board, which we did, but we had to do it virtually. I'd love to do it live. And I wish you good nights of sleep in the weeks ahead.
Thank you. Thanks, sir. Thanks to you and your team. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks, Governor.
Take care, man.
Yeah, bye-bye.